Well, this is the Sean Hannity Show. I'm Louis Gohmert, Congressman from East Texas. And you heard from our Secretary of State, what an embarrassment, and from just a great individual in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And if you've ever wondered, gee, Obama, Kerry, all these leftists that are condemning Israel for not giving up their country, part of their country, actually part that was the promised land, if you believe the Bible, was promised by God, and the Red Sea parted so they could head there on their way. But are they really being fair about this? The answer is, well, if these same type folks and the people that support these folks, if they demanded that Jordan give up that same land when it controlled the land and give it to the Palestinians. And as Newt Gingrich has said, that's a new term relatively, came about just in the last 50 years. Nobody made that demand of Jordan, which gives you a good indication these people really hate the children of Israel, and they are out to undermine it. Once you go to Israel and you go to the Golan Heights, you go to the West Bank, you see clearly that if they gave that important part of Judea and Samaria up, that was the promised land, if they give that up, then basically it makes Israel indefensible under conventional methods. But my friend Joel Rosenberg writes great books. He likes to point to Joel 3, book in the Old Testament, says, "For behold, in those days and at that time, when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem," that's after he's brought all people back to the promised land, which has happened. He says, "I will gather all the nations." This is God speaking through Joel, if you believe as I do, and our next guest does. "I will gather all the nations, bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. Then I will enter into judgment with them there on behalf of my people and my inheritance Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and they divided up my land." So that's why Joel Rosenberg says, you don't want to be one of those nations that was pushing to divide Israel. It isn't going to go well for you. And my next guest, you've seen him on Fox, but he is just a great friend. He grew up with my wife, Kathy, in First Baptist Church of Dallas, Texas. And lo and behold, great thing, he's pastor there, Dr. Robert Jeffress. And Robert, welcome to the Sean Hannity Show.
Well, great to be with you, Louis. Thanks for having me.
Well, Kathy, my wife, knew you were brilliant in high school, and you were such a powerful part of the youth group. But I want to talk to you. When you hear people talking of the land that some call Palestine, the late Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion said bluntly, God gave it to us. And Netanyahu told me this when I'd mentioned to him several years ago, look, you can go back to the very inception of Israel. There's never been a time in Israel's history, going back to the beginning, when Israel has given away land trying to buy peace, that land was not used as a staging area from which to attack it. And then he looked at me a long time and he said, that's a problem, isn't it? And it is. But, Robert, you know the Bible so well. Does the Bible say anything about today's land dispute between the Israelis and the Palestinians? What role should religion play in this conflict?
Well, it has a great deal to say about it. And let me just say bluntly, Louis, John Kerry and Barack Obama are not only on the wrong side of history, they're on the wrong side of God on this issue.
Ooh, that's that's not a good place to be.
It's not a good place, and America doesn't want to be in that place. Look, in Genesis 12 and 13 and then in 15, God outlined the geography of the land he was giving to his people, and the land that is described there includes what we call today the West Bank, Gaza, the Golan Heights. All of that was a part of God's gift to his people, and he said, you will live there forever. Now, I realize we have people who don't believe that the Bible's the inspired Word of God, but at least it provides a history, if nothing else. And that's why prime ministers have appealed to it. It shows that Israel has been in that land. It's been there for more than 3,500 years.
Robert,
and Louis, the fact is the Palestinians have no claim. They have tried to create this imaginary linkage to the Philistines who were there before Abraham. That is ludicrous. That violates Muslim theology that says that the Muslims are in the lineage of Abraham and Ishmael. They don't have any linkage to the Philistines. They are not the ones who belong in that land. It is Israel, and it's always been that.
Well, what about, you know the history, what about the Canaanites, the ones that were displaced? Are there any descendants of the Canaanites today?
You can't find a Canaanite anywhere today.
No.
You can't find a Philistine anywhere.
They're gone.
There are
they have no descendants alive today.
No. There are only two lines that remain. You have the descendants of Abraham and Ishmael. And by the way, in Genesis 16, God said to Ishmael and his descendants that they would have a great land to the east of Israel. And God blessed the Arabs with oil-rich land. But in Genesis 17, he said, this land is reserved for Abraham, Isaac, and their descendants. And I want to say something else, Louis.
Sure.
You quoted Joel chapter 3. Joel chapter 2 says in verses 2 to 3 that God will judge any nation that, quotes, divides the land that God gave to Israel. And that is why it is a scary thing to listen to Barack Obama and John Kerry. The good news is we have a new president coming, Donald J. Trump, who is determined to be on the right side of history and of God on this issue.
Well, Dr. Robert Jeffress, pastor of First Baptist Church. Robert, you were with Trump from the very beginning, not as a formal endorsement, but you know Israel so well, and I'm intrigued after most Americans have never been there, but I was so intrigued the times I've been there. Was down in Hebron, which is considered, that's supposed to be Palestinian land. And I'm standing there at the tomb of King David's father. David ruled over Israel from Hebron, as you know, for 7 years before he went up to Jerusalem. And, that was about, let's say, 1020, maybe 1012 BC. And then he goes to Jerusalem. But we know, wasn't it about 620 A.D. that, and this is in dispute, some say Muhammad actually overnight was on a winged donkey and went to Jerusalem. Some say it was just a vision, a dream he had. But whether it was a dream or a vision, or he actually was on the winged donkey that flew to Jerusalem, that's the only tie that, of any type, that Muhammad himself had with Jerusalem. And even if you suspect that he actually did fly overnight on that donkey and land in Jerusalem, that came 1,600 years after King David was ruling over Israel. There is no prior claim by the Palestinians to that land.
Absolutely no prior claim. And
but tell us about some of the places, the cities that we know, we've heard in the Bible, read in the Bible, that are considered part of the West Bank these days.
Well, exactly. I mean, you've got Bethel, you've got Bethlehem, you have Hebron, as you mentioned, Anatot, Jericho. All of these are in what is considered to be the West Bank today, but they were always a part of Israel. And, you talked about a trip to Israel, Louis. The last time I was there, I had an Israeli military official say to me, he said, you people in the United States talk about how we need to divide up Jerusalem. Suppose that the French were to say to you, you Americans, we've deliberated over here in France, and we believe that you ought to divide up your capital, Washington, D.C., and give some of it to ISIS terrorists. I mean, they promised to act nice if you'll just give them some of the land. That would be absolutely ludicrous. Why should we be listening to the French and have people here who would try to destroy us?
Well, the difference...
These Palestinians don't only deny Israel's right to the land, they deny Israel's right to even exist.
Yeah, you were saying giving part of Washington to ISIS if they act nice, but the Palestinians have promised they're not going to act nice. Well, look, we just got 10 seconds. What parting words of wisdom can you leave, Dr. Robert Jeffress, with our listeners?
Well, I mean, the good news is we've got somebody who's going to be on the right side of history on this. And the important thing is not that God is on our side. The important thing is that we be on God's side.
Amen.
And God is always with Israel.
Well, and that is what Abraham Lincoln said. Thanks so much, Dr. Robert Jeffress. Good friend, great American. We'll be right back with more of the Sean Hannity Show. I'm Louis Gohmert.